On the home page, we will have a dashboard where we can view all the resources. You can also go to the hamburger icon here and click all resources to view if you have any resource at all. This account is brand new and I do not have any resources created on this account. If you go to the home page, you can see I have an active subscription. Now, if you do not have a subscription, you can try Azure for free for the 30-day trial, and they also give $200 of free credit. But after that, you will require an Azure subscription. Now, the first service that we will understand in this course is the storage account, and inside there we have Blob storage. So in order to create that, you can click directly on the storage account, or you have the hamburger icon. There you have storage accounts. You can also search for any resource right here. So if you start typing, you can see storage accounts. Let's click there. I do not have any existing storage account, so let's create one. We will select the Azure subscription here and resource group. Resource group is basically like a folder that you have in which you can bundle multiple things together. This is more helpful in cases where you have multiple resources for multiple environments. Like let's say you have development, staging, preview, and production. And for each one of them, you will have a storage account, you'll have app services, logic apps, functions, and much more. So you can assign them in the particular resource group. That way it is easier to see which are all the resources inside development or inside production. All the resources that we'll be creating will assign them inside a resource group Azure Learning. You can create a new resource group if you want, but we will use the Azure Learning for this course. Next we scroll down, we have to give our storage a meaningful name. I will give this a name of Azure.NET Mastery. Next is the region in which you want your storage account to be. You will select the region that is closer to your location. That way it is faster to access. Next we have the performance here. Based on the storage accounts, you have standard and premium performance. Standard uses magnetic disk and premium uses SSD. And as you can guess, the pricing will also be higher if you use SSDs, which is in premium. For this course, we will be using standard because we just want to learn the basics. Then if your application requires higher performance, you can always select the performance accordingly. But for this course, we will go with the standard version. Now the data in Azure Storage account is always replicated to ensure durability and high availability. Based off that, we can select the redundancy to make sure how resistant we want. We will select the locally redundant storage, which is the cheapest option for this course. Then you can go through some advanced configuration, networking configuration, on do you want to make this a private endpoint or accessible by everyone, how long you want the soft delete to be so that if a blob object is deleted, how many days should it retain, and you can tag this particular storage account. That way it will be easier to see all the resources that are tagged together. We'll just go with the basic settings and we'll click Review plus Create. Here all the validations are passing successfully. Once all the validations are successful, let's create our storage account. This will take a while, but it will create our storage account. So let's wait for the deployment. And perfect, our deployment is complete. You can click Go to Resource here, and that will take you to the Azure.NET Mastery storage account. With that, let's continue from the next video. Now that we have seen what are containers with our storage account, let's actually navigate to our storage account that we created. And on the left-hand side panel, inside the data storage, you can see we have containers, file shares, queues, and tables. What we want to do for blob storage is we will navigate to the container. Here we just have logs right now. We will have to create a new container. If we go to our overview tab here, we see we had blob service. When you click on Blob service, it will actually redirect you to the same screen that was present with the containers, as you can see here. So let's create our container here. We will give this a name of .NET Mastery-images, and then we have to select an access level. Private means that there won't be any anonymous access. Blob access level will give you the read access for blobs only, and if you have this as container, anyone can read these objects. We will keep that as private. That means there won't be any anonymous access. Let's create this. Great, our container has been created. Let's click on the container name and we will navigate inside that container. In here, we can upload an image. Let's go to the upload and let me select a file. Inside the snippets that I have provided with the course, there is an images folder and we can upload one of the image. Let's upload that. Perfect, upload has been completed and we see that image in the container right here. If you click on this image, it will bring up more details about when it was uploaded, when it was last modified, what is the content type, and so on. If you click on the Edit tab here, you will be able to see the image as well. So you can see there's quite a few overview that is given. But the main thing you should notice here is there is a URL using which this image can be accessed. Let's copy this URL and paste that in the browser. Once you press enter, you will get an error that the specified resource does not exist. So what exactly is going on here? We have the image, we have its URL, we are copying the URL, and we are pasting the exact URL, but still we cannot access that resource. The reason behind that is the access level that we granted to this resource was private. So how can we fix that? If we go back to our Azure portal, and if we go back to our container, there is the change access level. We can change the access level from private to, let's say, blob, and let's press enter. Once we do that, if we go back and refresh, you can see the image is being displayed. Let's upload one more image to our container. We will click the upload button one more time, and we will have to select a file. Let's select image 2 this time. If you click on the Advanced tab here, you will notice that there are multiple block types that you can use. We are using the block blob here, and we have the block size as 4 MB. Then we have access tier here. Hot is optimized for storing data that is accessed frequently, like images. Cool is typically used for storing data that is infrequently accessed and stored for at least 30 days. Archive will be used for storing data that is rarely accessed, like backups or something even rare, where they are stored for at least 180 days with flexible latency requirement. So based off that, hot will be expensive, cool will be less expensive, and archive will be least expensive with maximum data. We'll go with hot because we are using that for our images. Then next we can also upload or create folders inside our directory. So let's create a folder with the name of XPS and we will upload that inside that folder. But inside Azure containers, there are no physical folder structures. It is just a virtual folder that will be created. Let me create this, or rather upload this, and show you what I mean. You can see inside the browser it displays that a folder was created. If we navigate in that folder, you can see the new image that we uploaded. Let's examine its properties. You can see the name here itself is XPS / our image name. And that is what exactly happens in the storage account. There are no folder structures inside the container. It is just virtual folder. This means the name will be saved as XPS / and then the final name. So while it renders here, it displays a folder, but that is just a virtual directory. So let's copy this URL and let's go here and paste that. You can see the new image is also accessible right here. Now if you notice the path here, we have our Azure storage account name which is Azure.NET Mastery, and then this is blob.core.windows.net that is given by the Azure team. Next, we have the directory name that we created, which is .NET Mastery-images, and then we have XPS image2, that's the name. Now, in order to list all of the images inside our directory, we just have comp is equal to list. So if we write that, we will get an error that resource was not found. And the reason behind that is if we go back to our directory here, we see the access level was blob only. You cannot access or read anything other than the blobs directly. If you want to give access to list all the objects, you will have to change that to container. Let's do that and let's hit OK. It might take a few minutes for this to be actually reflected, but once that is changed, if you refresh this page, you can see both the blobs that we have inside our container. And here you can notice it is displaying both the blobs. That basically means that there are no folders, it is just virtual directory. Inside the URL, you will see the virtual folder name that we gave, which was XPS. So perfect, in this video, we saw how we can create virtual directories and we can upload images to our blob container. Now that we have seen some of the items that we will cover in this course, let's go into some details. Now that we have seen some of the items that we will be covering, in this course, let's go to our container. Now we can see how we are able to upload images to our blob container. But we need to understand that this is a container where we can store some images, PDF files, HTML, or basically any data that we want. But our main scope comes in how we interact with the Azure Blob Storage or the Azure container using a .NET application. And for that, we will have to get our hands dirty with some code. So for that, let me open up Visual Studio, and I'm using 2022. Here we will start by creating a new project. We need to select a template. We will be using .NET Core MVC application. I have that in the recent templates here, or if you just search for ASP.NET Core, we have the web app. We'll be using the model, view, and controller. Let's hit the next button. We will change the location to where we want, and I will change the solution name to Azure Fundamentals. I will change the project name to Azure Blob Project. Let's create the project. Next, we have to configure few properties, like what is the .NET version that we want to use. I will be using .NET 6 for this course. For authentication type, we will go with none because we don't care about any authentication for this example. This will purely focus on how to access our blob storage images and containers. We will enable the Razor runtime compilation. That way, if we make some change while the application is running inside the views, we do not have to rebuild the application. With this, let's create our project. And perfect, our project has been created here. If we go to Solution Explorer, it takes a while to load the dependencies, but perfect. Everything looks good here. Let's continue with our project from the next video. Now that the project has been created, what we need to do is if we go back to our Azure portal, we need to change the access level again. So here we will make it private so that no one else can access these images. Let's go back to the directory level, and inside the root level we have private. Perfect. That looks good. If you select this, great, that is private. So now if you go back to any of the image, if you copy the URL and paste it here, this will no longer be accessible, and that is perfect. Once our blob objects are not accessible directly, we need to get a secure way to access them. So what is that secure way now? If we close this, and then we need to go back to the storage account level. So right now we are in the container. We have to go one step back inside the storage account. Let's scroll down. We have access keys right here. These are the access keys that can be used when the account is private. So let me click Show Keys here, and we will copy the complete connection string. We do not want just the key, we want the complete connection string. So let me copy this, and we will switch back to our application. We will have to store that key in some place, and we will be storing that inside appsettings.json. Inside production application, you can store this in an Azure secret key vault. So right now, we'll just keep things simple, and I'll call this as blob connection, and we will paste the connection string inside double quotation. That looks great. We have the connection string using which we will be able to access our storage account. So you can name it storage connection, but in this course, we will be working with blob only. That's why I have called this as blob connection. Now that the connection string is added in appsettings.json, how do we actually configure our application to use this connection string to access blob account? In the earlier version of .NET Core, up till .NET 5, we had program.cs as well as startup class file. But in .NET 6, we will only have program.cs to consolidate both of those files in one single file. So here first we will be adding services to the container, and then in the later part we will be configuring the pipeline. In the earlier version we had configure services method as well as configure method, but the .NET Core team has simplified everything in one program.cs file. When we have to add anything for the services to the container, we will do that on the builder object. So builder.services, there we will have to add a singleton reference for the blob service. So right here we will say u goes to new, and we will have to create an object of blob service client. This is the library that will be used to interact with the storage account for the blob service. If you do control dot here, it should display the NuGet package that we have to install. That is azure.storage.blob. Let's find and install the latest version. You can also install that by managing the NuGet packages, but I did that directly right here. Great, we have the using statement that got added because of that, and then we have to pass our connection string right here. For that, we will need the configuration to access app settings. Previously, we had the iConfiguration in .NET 5, but in .NET 6, it is readily available directly inside the builder. We have configuration. Then here, we have the method, which is getValue. We know that the type will be string, and we just need to pass the key name. Key name is inside app settings. We have defined that as blob connection, so we will copy and paste that right here. So with this, we have injected the service for blob service client. For that, we also added a NuGet package. You can see it's azure.storage.blobs, and we passed the connection string from appsettings.json. So that was the configuration needed to configure blob service inside the program class file. With that in place, let's continue from the next video.